welcome to Week 10 of Jets Final Drive. I'm your host, Jeane Coakley, and I am joined, like always, by SNY's and the Ringer's John Jastremski. Well, you're here most of the time, but you know who I'm not, who's always here, but is not here? Connor Hughes. He decided to go cover the Giants today. I don't know why.
He wanted to go from one level of misery, Jeane, to another level of misery. That was basically Connor's choice on this Tuesday afternoon. Let's be honest. It's like, I can't deal with enough pain and suffering. I'm going to go deal with even more with another football team. So there you have it.
Well, his loss, but my gain, because I get to be with you, JJ. This is going to be fun, okay? Well,
it's always fun joining you, Jeane, and I wish I could come and join you with better news and put everybody in a better mood. I feel like I got to be like the Grim Reaper walking around here, but listen, I only can control what I can control. So don't kill the messenger, okay?
I will not. But just a reminder, before we get going, just a reminder, you can find the audio version of Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. All right, JJ, did you watch the game?
Of course I watched the game. Jeane, I'll take it a step further.
I'm sorry.
I was actually dumb enough to bet on the Jets thinking they would win and take care of business against the Arizona Cardinals. And to be honest, Jeane, the minute I saw Kyler Murray and the Cards go right down the field on the opening drive of the game and score a touchdown, I kind of had a feeling in my stomach saying I might have made myself a little bit of a mistake.
Well, they were favored, but, they lost 31-6 by Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. They didn't do anything well on both sides of the ball. But let's talk about the defense first, because, JJ, I've never seen so many missed tackles ever in a game. Who do you blame for that? Like, who's to blame for that? Because they kept saying,
well, I think it's the entire defense as a whole, right? Like, for example, Sauce Gardner, to me, had the biggest missed tackle in the game. Now, the Jets were probably going to lose this game anyway. Things were not going according to script on both sides of the ball. But there was a sequence. I wish I could tell you what the score was, but it was a third down and third and long where if Sauce Gardner goes and makes a tackle on McBride, you're talking about the Jets getting the ball back. You're talking about a significant swing in momentum in the game. And he flat out whiffed on the tackle. For a guy who is expected to be paid like, and this is how he has talked, and this is what he has expressed as a goal of his, to be the highest paid corner in the league, let's call it like it is, Jeane. Sauce Gardner has not played like the highest paid corner in the league. To me, his play has taken a significant step back from where it was in year one and year two. And I'm not going to just say that Sauce was the only one missing tackles, but I look at my best players and I hold them to a different standard, quite frankly, than other guys who are on this defense. And I really was ticked off when I see Sauce Gardner going back and forth with Rich Cimini on Twitter after your team just got absolutely smoked and you have to go and basically debate a member of the media about a missed tackle, the idea that you were singled out. You're singled out, Sauce, because you're supposed to be one of the best. Own it. Acknowledge it, and I would hope that somebody in that building would pull Sauce aside and say, look, we know you're a tremendous talent. You screwed up. You made a big mistake. That is a play that needs to be made. I don't need you going back and forth, firing Twitter salvos against a member of the media. Be better. Simply put, Jeane. So I am singling out Sauce Gardner because I hold him to a much different standard than I do other guys on this defense.
Yeah, just stay off Twitter. But after the game, he did say he has to be better. He has to tackle better. But I kept hearing execution. JJ, when do you learn how to execute? This is week 10. Is it practice? Is it something they should have done a long time ago? Is it what? How do you learn how to tackle? I've never tackled before.
It's a great question. Jeane, I can't say that I am an expert at being able to tackle, the best that the NFL has to offer because it's not a skill set that I would necessarily have. Definitely wouldn't be one of my strong suits. But I think the problems you're seeing with this defense, they really stem from, and I don't know if it's necessarily the tackling per se, but just the performance as a whole. You took your defensive coordinator and made him the interim head coach after 5 games. You put Jeff Ulbrich in an impossible situation because it's everything that you have to deal with when it comes to being the head coach of an NFL team. Then you throw in the fact that you're the head coach of a New York football team, which throws an entirely different monkey wrench into the equation. And oh, by the way, you're calling the plays for this defense. Now your attention is not where it necessarily needs to be or what you thought it was going to be at the start of the year, because you got to be focused on your special teams. You got to be focused on what's going on with Aaron Rodgers in the offense. You have to be focused on just the narrative, the vibe, the locker room, the feel of your team. And I do believe, Jeane, this defense has taken a major hit by Jeff Ulbrich because of the position that he's in, being distracted as the interim head coach and not being focused primarily on what his job was or what his job was supposed to be at the start of the year.
All right, JJ, we focused a lot on the defense starts, rightfully so. But offensively, they have not been playing well. They didn't play well yesterday. They didn't get a touchdown. Who has been more disappointing to you this year? Has it been the Jets offense or the Jets defense?
I wish I could choose all of the above, to be perfectly honest with you, Jeane, because when you're 3-7, then there's a whole lot of disappointment to go around. I am going to say, though, the defense to me has been far more disappointing from this standpoint. The Jets last year and the year before that, they kind of prided themselves on this defense coming of age and all of the talent that we saw in the defense, from DJ Reed to Quinnen Williams to Sauce Gardner, to the idea, and I know we didn't see him for the first 7 or 8 games, but you go and make the Hassan Reddick trade. I thought the Jet defense was going to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. Why? Because it was last year and it was the year before that. I cannot believe how bad of a defense they have been across the board. And I don't know if that's the Ulbrich impact. I don't know if that's losing some of the guys they lost in the offseason, like John Franklin Myers, who was terrific at stopping the run, not getting Hassan Reddick in the building. I thought the Jet defense was going to be top-notch. I thought the Jet offense was going to go through some growing pains. And we saw that early in the year. It is disappointing, though, Jeane, because, you look at this game against the Cardinals. The defense, I thought, was going to struggle with Kyler Murray. They've struggled with running quarterbacks. I didn't think they'd give up 31 points. I didn't think they'd be as non-competitive as they were. But let's not ignore the fact the Jets scored 6 points in this game. I don't care who you are in the NFL, Jeane. If you score 6 points, you are not winning games on Sunday. This is not 1976. You cannot win NFL football games that way. I don't care how well you move it between the 20s. You got to execute in the red zone. You got to go and score touchdowns. And after what the team was able to do in the second half against the Texans, I foolishly, Jeane, thought they would follow that up in a big way, that it would be a lot more Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, and it felt like Aaron Rodgers and his receivers weren't on the same page. It felt like the Jets couldn't go and finish a drive, and they scored 6 points. So I have to be wishy-washy on this. I'm sorry, Jeane. I can't pick one. I'd lean defense, but the offense is incredibly disappointing too. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, well, I'll give you one A and one B. Sorry, I just hit my computer. I was just so
Nice. You were so angry and agitated. I understand.
This offense hasn't scored 25 points yet this season. It's just mind-blowing to me 10 weeks in. And you just want to be like, what is it? We were talking before, can you put your finger on it?
I think it's a variety.
If you did, you'd be making more money than you are right now if you could put your finger on what's wrong.
Well, I guess, but I think it's the offensive line at times has seen some reshuffling, and they lose Tyron Smith in this game. They lost the guards a couple weeks ago, but hey, they have enough depth on the offensive line where it's not like it was last year and the year before that, where it's null and void of talent. So I think that's just way too convenient an excuse. It's a part of the equation, but I'm going to acknowledge it. I also think the lack of chemistry and rapport that we've seen with Aaron Rodgers and the wide receivers has been a major problem. Think about Mike Williams, and when he was not on the same page with Aaron Rodgers, he had no problem, by the way, getting on the same page with Russell Wilson, scoring a game-winning touchdown against the Washington Commanders and going straight down the field. And by the way, a little food for thought, that's how you use Mike Williams properly. You have him run fly routes. You have him run down the field because that's what he's done best in his NFL career. But I think that lack of chemistry with the receivers is hurt. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room, Jeane. Aaron Rodgers has played like a 40-year-old quarterback. There has been good. I'm not going to say that he's been Zach Wilson bad, but he has not played like the MVP that he was in years past. And I think you're seeing the ripple effects of age and a torn Achilles and not having the same mobility, and he can't move around a whole lot. So when that ends up being the case and you face a team that can get after him, see that stat line right there, Jeane?
Yeah.
He's struggling.
Yes, he has. All right, let's move on, because let's talk about the leadership and the preferred style, of play aside. Does Aaron Rodgers have the skills, athleticism, durability needed to consistently play at the high level? You just talked about it. He's 40, almost 41. He turns 41 next month. Coming off that torn Achilles, does he have all those pieces to lead this team with 10 weeks left? I mean, is there 10 weeks left? No. More than halfway, 7 weeks left.
Here's the issue for Rodgers. I think a lot of people, Jeane, thought he could walk into this building, be the missing piece, be the missing ingredient, and propel them over the top. I think there was a miscalculation in maybe the talent, maybe the coaching, maybe the overall feel within the building, and the fact that, not everybody's Tom Brady. I think that was like the best case scenario that people were looking at, like Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was a middling team, but they had talent. You could see that there was talent there. They get the greatest quarterback of all time, and that's what Tom Brady is, the greatest quarterback of all time. He had a chip on his shoulder. He had something to prove, and it took them some time. They weren't perfect the first half of the year, but they got it to go. They got it going. The defense started coming on, and Brady willed them. Aaron Rodgers doesn't seem to have that, and it's probably unfair asking Aaron Rodgers to beat Tom Brady, because you know what, Jeane? There's only one Tom Brady. But we're seeing an Aaron Rodgers that doesn't have the same gas that he had left in the tank. He's a different kind of character than Tom Brady. And listen, I think his teammates like him. I think that's been obvious. If you go back to his Green Bay days, there are guys that are in his corner. I think there are guys in the Jet locker room that are cruelly in his corner. But it doesn't have the same galvanizing locker room feel and impact that those Tampa teams had. And if you want to blame that on him, if you want to blame that on the coaching, if you want to blame that on ownership, you could blame it on the entire operation. But that sort of tight-knit, close, unified team, you're around the team every day. You don't exactly feel that. Not just because of the performance, but because of just the body language and the way they look and the way that they have kind of gone through this season. How can anybody sit there and tell me this Jet team looks together? They don't look together, Jeane. I'm sorry. I don't see it. Yeah,
and I think that's a valid point. And also, JJ, in fairness to Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady didn't blow out his Achilles at 40. I mean, I think that's a big part of this. I mean, last year, do you think, I know hindsight, what is it, 2020 hindsight or whatever, hindsight's 2020, whatever. I think their best year was last year when Aaron didn't tear his ACL or Achilles.
Oh, of course. Listen, you're talking about a quarterback getting up there in age. So no matter the case, Father Time is undefeated. I know these quarterbacks now can play in their 40s, and it's not a matter of Aaron Rodgers being able to throw the ball. When Aaron Rodgers has time to throw the ball, he still throws as pretty a ball as you're going to find. He can be on the money. He can deliver it down the field. That's not the question. The question is, Aaron Rodgers, when there's not that time and when he's got to go off script and he's got to do the sort of things that, hey, he used to be able to do when he was younger. Yeah, the stuff now that Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes can do on a weekly basis, Jeane, he can't do those things. So, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, they would have had a better shot last year to be that sort of top-level AFC team, looking back on it, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't blow out Achilles and he's not up there in age another year. But just think about this roster. There's a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
But
both sides.
It's just the vibe, the feel. You can have a lot of talent, but if you don't have that sort of cohesiveness within a locker room and everybody kind of moving and working together, and I'm not saying that it's because the Jet guys are bad guys. I don't think they're bad guys at all, but it's the idea of molding and meshing a team together. They have not done that in the way that other great teams are able to do it, and I think it shows.
All right, JJ, so we got less than half the season left. Obviously, the Jets are probably going to be looking for a new head coach next year. How does this team make it attractive to want to come to New York Jets, players and coaches?
You got to win games. I think winning games helps if you go and finish off the season strongly. And it looks like you're seeing positive signs from a lot of the talented guys that are in this room. I think that would help. I mean, you would think, Jeane, it's New York City. It's the idea of coming to the big market, the big town, and you have a chance to exercise a whole lot of demons that have been hanging over the franchise. The longest drought for the playoffs in all professional sports. We know the Super Bowl drought goes back to the days of Joe Willie Namath. Like, to me, if I'm a player, and obviously money talks, I find that incredibly appealing. Hey, let's go and make history. Let's go and be a part of something special around here. But I think as far as making the Jets more viable, hey, look at the last offseason, 2, 3, 4 off seasons. Plenty of big name attractions have found their way to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers found his way to the Jets. Davante Adams found his way to the Jets. Hassan Reddick found his way to the Jets. So I don't even know if that's necessarily a problem for them, Jeane. They're getting the big name. They're getting the star player. But they need to find the right people who can cultivate that sort of togetherness that is not there right now. End of story.
All right. So say you talk about all these pieces. You got Garrett Wilson. You got Braylon Allen. You got Breece Hall. You got, you're naming all these players. If Woody doesn't decide to, get rid of all his future assets, he keeps these guys. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to come back. Who's the Jets quarterback next year?
Whoo! That is a loaded question, Jeane. Because first off, you have to tell me where they're picking in the draft. There are going to be a lot of teams, including the one here in this town that our buddy Connor Hughes is checking out at the moment, that might be in the market and will be in the market for a quarterback. Tennessee is going to be in that market. Is Carolina going to be in that market? The Raiders, there are a lot of bad teams throughout the league. So once you see where the Jets are drafting, you can start to say, hey, do they have a shot at any of the top quarterbacks? Are they not going to be in the market for any of the top quarterbacks? Once you address that, then you're looking at, all right, who is going to be available on the free agency route? And you know who is profiling? You're going to laugh when I say this. And I don't think it's going to happen. But you know who's profiling right now to be the most interesting free agent quarterback? Let's see if you could guess. You know him well.
Is he older or younger?
You covered him. He was a former Jet quarterback.
Sam Darnold?
Uh-huh. Sam Darnold is going to, and I know it's not going to happen today. I'm very aware of this. First of all, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back next year. I don't think he's going to retire.
You think that's going to help the Jets or hurt the Jets, though? Because he'll be 41, almost 42 at that point.
Well, here's the problem. His cap hit is so astronomically high if he retires that you're going to be in a really tough financial situation. Even if Aaron Rodgers says, hey, I'm going to smoke Ayushka and I'm going to go call it a career, you're still on the hook for that dead cap hit. So I get what you're saying as far as turning the page with the franchise, but that requires a little luck here down the stretch of this year. Certain teams not take, their most viable path to their next quarterback, Jeane, is drafting one. We're in full-fledged agreement on that. I'm just giving you the scenario. If, hey, Aaron Rodgers retires, what do you do? The number one free agent quarterback is Sam Darnold. I can't imagine the Jets would go down that road. So
I'm not sure Sam Darnold would want to go down that road again.
I don't think so either. I think Sam Darnold's going to have options, and there are going to be a lot of quarterback-needy teams. Because remember, he'll be gone in Minnesota next season because they got J.J. McCarthy waiting in the wings from Michigan who got hurt. And, hey, Darnold, I know he's slumped and has regressed the last few weeks. He's done enough, considering how many crummy quarterbacks are out there, that he's going to be starting games next year. But the Jets either need Rodgers to come back next year, which, again, I think he will, or they're going to have to go and draft a guy. They need to think about the future of that position. But, Jeane, in order to do that, you got to tell me first, hey, is Joe Douglas still making picks? Is he going to return as Jet general manager? And if he's involved in the process, or it's Christopher Johnson now with Woody, who knows, probably finding his way back to London, who's naming the next head coach of this team? I think once we have those answers, putting those other pieces into place will make a little bit more sense.
What about the guy they drafted in the 6th round this past draft, Jordan Travis? Do you think he can fight for that starting spot?
Usually teams that go down the road, though, of the 6th to the 7th round quarterback have that stable infrastructure, right? Like the Niners. The Niners were a winning team. Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt 2 years ago playing my team. And you looked at the roster and you're like, wow, loaded offensive line. Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel. Let's see if this Brock Purdy kid is any good. The rest is history. Brock Purdy is going to go make himself whatever, $200, $300 million in the offseason. Crazy, crazy money. Maybe not 300, but you get my drift.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Jets, Jeane, are at a point in time where they can entrust a 6th or a 7th round pick to go and be the next quarterback of the team. He's got to, let's put it this way, Jeane, he's got to wow to the point of beyond the wow in practice in order to go and make that happen. And if he does and he ends up being successful, they'll be making Disney movies about it. And you might even be a part of it. So, buckle up if that happens.
Yes, 15 years. Maybe I'll get to be in a Disney movie. All right, let's talk about another former Jets quarterback, Zach Wilson. How crazy is this stat, JJ? Zach Wilson has the most wins for a Jets or Giants quarterback since Aaron Rodgers went down with an Achilles injury with 4 wins. That's more than Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, or Tommy DeVito. They all have 3. How crazy is that?
You mentioned this to me right before we signed on, and you wanted to get my initial reaction. I couldn't even process the reaction. I'm like, that can't be real. You got to be giving me some sort of fake statistic or whatnot. But it kind of speaks volumes to how rotten this season has been. And in no way, shape, or form am I suggesting that the Jets were, wrong to jettison Zach Wilson. It was time. He was terrible. He couldn't complete passes. He couldn't run functional offense. But you know what it shows you, Jeane? How different the defense was a year ago, that they were able to go and win games. The Giant game, the Eagle game. I could give you a bunch last year where their offense didn't exactly light the world on fire, but they were so darn competitive defensively. They won those sort of games that this year they're not winning with better offensive play. Now, they're not scoring points, but you watch the team day in and day out. They are moving the ball, and they are performing better, at least from the eye test, offensively than what they had last year. But the fact that this is even conversational, where it's hey, Jet offensively, EPA per play, all the statistics that you compile, points per game, yardage, etc. The fact that they're not leaps and bounds better offensively, it's a sad commentary on where this season has gone.
Do you think last year's team, with the way the defense played last year, is better than this year's Jets team? Would they have been able to
the team 2 years ago, I'd probably say yes, Jeane, just because, they at least had Mike White play some competent offense for a couple of weeks. Last year's team was a rough watch. Jeane, I feel for you because you're at every single one of these games. You've seen it all. You're going to have one hell of a story to write when your Jet tenure in 30 years comes to a close. Hopefully you'll get some winning numbers right now. At some point. Think about that for a second, though, Jeane. Their points per game is only 2.5
I
points
know.
higher.
First time I'm seeing this, too.
Think about that. 2.5 points higher with a much improved offensive line and a future Hall of Famer at quarterback. Can't make it up. The Jets should be averaging, with the talent they have on offense, 21 to 24 points per game. That's not hyperbole. That's not exaggeration. Jeane, they're much better on the offensive line. They added Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses. They got Vera Tucker back. Another year of Joe Tippmann, Simpson. They are much better on the offensive line. They should not be this crummy on offense.
I know, it's crazy. All right, JJ. I'm going to let you, you were great. You and I talked this whole time. I got to talk about another team, the AFC East, the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, now you want to put me in better spirits.
That's what I'm saying.
I didn't expect to be in good spirits about the Dolphins today, Jeane. It's nice.
What do you think? Is this team it's trending in the right way now after beating the Rams?
They saved their season for another week. So the way the AFC shakes out, Buffalo's a lock to win the AFC East. Baltimore, Pittsburgh's going to win the North. Kansas City is a lock, obviously, to win the West. And Houston, because of how just awful the AFC South is, they're going to win that division. That means you got Pittsburgh, the Chargers. They're 2 playoff teams. There's 1 spot left. Denver at 5-5, I think, is vulnerable. Cincinnati at 4-6 has underperformed. Miami, if they win their next 2 games, very feasible. Home against Vegas, they're a 7.5-point favorite. Home against New England, they're a 7.5-point favorite. If they win those 2 games, and it's going to require some cooperation from the Jets and making sure the Dolphins go and beat the Jets twice, we'll see if that ends up happening.
I don't know. When was the last time that happened?
Yes, Miami has had some good success against the Jets the last few years. So I'm obviously hopeful that is the case. I know the audience is not, but that's okay. I'm allowed to showcase this from time to time. Dolphins win the next 2 games today. At least I have a game to get excited for on Thanksgiving. They're healthier, and they're clearly, the moral of the story is, they're a totally different team when Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback. He's efficient. He puts up points. He runs the offense. The other quarterbacks cannot run Mike McDaniel's system. When Tua is the Dolphin quarterback, they're a totally different team. If he can stay healthy, they're going to be at least interesting as we proceed down the stretch of this year.
JJ, if I would have told you beginning of week 1, you and I are having this conversation with Connor, would you have thought we'd be saying this? That the Jets are, 3-7? And are the Jets 3-7? Yeah. And what are
well, think about it, Jeane. The odds to win the division at the beginning of the year, the Jets were favored. Buffalo and Miami were neck and neck. I think most pundits looked at this division and said, it's a 3-horse race. It's going to come down to the final couple weeks of the year, and it's going to be one of the most competitive 3-way races that we have in football. Kind of similar to what's going on in the NFC West, where San Fran's there, Seattle's there. All those teams are in the mix. The fact that the AFC East was over before Halloween,
I know.
Sad commentary, man. Sad. The Patriots, you knew were going to be in that bottom tier. Miami and the Jets being in this position is crazy. At least Miami has an excuse. Their quarterback was out. Jets don't have that excuse.
I can tell you this, though, JJ. This Sunday, we got a 1 o'clock game. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, hallelujah, Jeane. I don't know who was dancing more when they got the news of that. You, because you get to be out at MetLife Stadium in much warmer temperatures and you actually could get to bed at a decent hour. Or me, kids, because I don't have to do sports night at 1 o'clock in the morning after the crazy guys, Willie Bart, Connor Rodgers, and Gelbs are yelling and screaming about another game. So thank you, schedule makers. We appreciate it.
We're always looking at the positive, JJ. Look, you and I look at positive, glass half
trying.
full.
We're holding on today. We're trying to find positives. And just maybe show a little life offensively on Sunday. That would be nice.
I think we will. And I know I said that last time, but I really think that was, and they all said it. They said this was embarrassing. This was awful. I hope so anyways. I'm optimistic and I'm positive. They're at home. They're playing against the Colts. They're playing against their old quarterback, Joe Flacco. Come on, guys. You can do this. Let's do this.
Starts with 1, Jeane. Starts at 1.
I've heard that before, yes. All right. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Jets Final Drive. You can find the audio version of Jets Final Drive on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. For JJ, I'm Jeane Coakley. Hey, JJ, thanks again. Appreciate you joining us. Well, me.
You got it.
That was fun. Connor, you missed out. We will see you Monday to recap the Jets-Colts matchup.